This is going to be a figure study oil painting walkthrough. I'm going to try to keep it to about 10 minutes. I was inspired to do this based on a previous walkthrough video that I did that was 15 minutes long that seemed to be relatively popular. So I'll try a slightly shorter one, and this time I'll try a figure study instead of a head and shoulders portrait. So what I've got on screen is the initial underpainting outline for this figure study. It's going to be a woman sitting by the water with her head in her hands. This one, the underpainting, I'm starting with oil paint thinned down with linseed oil. I tried not to make it too thin, but it is at least thinner than just regular paint out of the tube. It's kind of a blend of various browns and a little bit of cadmium red and a little yellow ochre to kind of get a brown, lighter brown color. Once that basic underpainting is down, just to try to, actually, let me step back and talk a little about the structure of the underpainting, because that's actually one of the most challenging things about these figure studies. I try to freehand these without doing any measuring, so getting proportions right is something that has taken some practice. Figure studies are kind of a point of emphasis for me going into the next year. I find them really fun to do, and I want to get more practice to try to get better at them. But I start with kind of a circle of the head, and then I do the skeletal structure of how the body's positioned. And I just try to gauge that based on positioning of other features, like where's the head in relation to the arm, what's the angle of the arm, where does the arm align with the chest and the leg, and just sort of piece it together like a puzzle. Again, this is something that does take some practice, but like with everything, repetition really helps a lot. So once the underpainting is finished, which I've moved on well past here in the video, I just go with paint straight out of the tube. I don't use any paint thinner or anything else. It's just the consistency that it comes in. And I blend it on a palette and just sort of mix it up, try to find the color combinations that I need. I lean pretty heavily. I mentioned cadmium red and yellow ochre, and then I kind of touch it up with white, titanium white to get lighter, or I might use some Umbers or some Siennas to change the hue, or even Ultramarine blue if I need some kind of shadowy colors. And I just sort of bring out what the color value, the lightness or the bright or darkness of that area is. So, and I use that underpainting outline that I started with to just figure out where those shapes of colors go. And you can see on this dress where I'm trying to put in little shapes. This is something that's taken some adjustment, because my instinct is I want to continue to blend things on the painting surface, which turns it into a muddy mess sometimes. I've mentioned in other videos, Bob Ross called these this mud mixer. You're turning into a mud mixer. So I try not to blend too much on the paper surface. Sometimes I'm not able to avoid that instinct because it's strong, but I'm trying really hard to put discrete shapes of color where I see them, or where they should be. It may not even be necessarily where they're visible on a reference, but try to block them out. I think that's what I've read other painters referring to as blocking in colors. So that's what I try to do. You know, build out these little shapes. Some of the shapes are a little, like if you look in the dress towards the back, they're very blue. There's some greens, there's some yellows, there's some browns, just trying to build those shapes in. So that's trying to work with broad shapes and just refine them and continue to work the painting. And this is wet on wet, it's alla prima. So the vast majority of this was in one session, which is how I like to work just due to time constraints. But trying to work those broad shapes into more narrow shapes over time. And hopefully, as I progress in this video, you can see the details are crystallizing now. We're moving from those I don't want to call it sketchy, but they're kind of blocky maybe, or they look like just splotches. Hopefully it starts to crystallize as the painting comes into focus. So as I started blocking in, eventually got the background in there, and I wanted kind of like a watery scene with some nature background. I'm really fond of that. I feel like this is another nod to Bob Ross, who I've always loved Joy of Painting. That's something that I still enjoy watching, but a little nod to his nature scenes there. Usually I'll fill in some of those background features around the head, especially because some of the details in the head I want to put in there, but I don't want filling in the background to mess up something that I feel like I've refined and gotten exactly how I want it, because there's always that chance that filling in the background I'm gonna accidentally slip or accidentally put some blue right through the middle of the subject's head or something, which if you're working wet on wet and everything is in that same session, accidentally slipping and plopping some green or blue in the middle of your subject's face is not at all the end of the world. But if you've spent a lot of time getting the details right, that's probably going to be a frustrating thing to have happen. So at the point where we have the video now, or approximately this point, we're getting pretty close to a point where I had to stop just due to life concerns. I think it was close to dinner time and we were going to go grab some food. So I had to stop. You know, that happens. Sometimes there's just not enough time that you've allotted, and things happen, you know. So in this one, I actually did have to stop, and I had to return to it, which is, I would say, less common for me. I really do try to knock them out in one session, but with this one, I wasn't able to do that. So I came back the next day, I think in the morning. The paint was still it was pretty wet, I guess. I could still work the way I wanted to. It was not as yielding as I like. Parts of it had started the drying process. I think you can actually see that in the dress where there's not a smooth laydown. There's kind of some, like where you can see where the paintbrush was dragging because it was a little dry. So that did start to happen here a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. I was able to work some additional layers onto it and get it to where I liked. So one of the things that I find really tricky about these figure studies, which again, I really want to keep practicing, you just have less real estate and less area to work in facial details, which is a challenge. You have to rely a lot on subtlety, which is very much a work in progress for me. I've only been painting for about a year, just over a year, so I have a lot of areas I need to improve on. I was thinking about New Year's resolutions for 2024, like what do I want to work on, painting-wise especially. The list started getting too long to really be realistic, so there's obviously a lot of stuff I want to focus on. But one of the big ones is doing more figure studies. I want to get much better at this. I think I'm better than the first ones, obviously, that I did. There's definitely improvement from that, but there's a lot of improvement, a lot of room to grow. So I would like to keep working on that. But so that is all I have for this 10-minute figure study. I hope it was useful. Please let me know in the comments or elsewhere if there are different lengths of walkthroughs that work better for you. I have a 15-minute that was Head and Shoulders that I did previously. Now I've got a 10-minute figure study. I'm thinking about also doing a 20-minute either figure study or Head and Shoulders portrait, just to leave more room for talking. So if those things are valuable, I'm more than happy to keep making them. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you for the next video.